Supreme Worshipful Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existences. Through many successive births of deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transcendental form. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described here as the reservoir of all goodness and all pleasure, unless one is situated in a mode of goodness, there is no real pleasure. When, therefore, one's body, mind, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfection stage of goodness. Kardama Muni says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness, and by experiencing your face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight is now been attained. These statements are the pure devotional situation for a devotee. The perfection of the senses is to engage in the service of the Lord. The sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. The power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasada, is perfected. When all the senses engage in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection in material indulgence. One's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. When one is freed from all designated conditional life and fully engaged and fully engages in the science, in the service of the Lord, one service is called Bhakti Yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally in Bhakti Yoga is the perfection of sight. The exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kardama Muni. He gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life, after life, to see this form of the personality of Godhead. He was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so the great sage Kardama said, O Supreme Worshipful Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existence. Through many successive births of deep meditation and advanced yogis, deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transcendental. Okay, so the Supreme Personality of God is described here as the reservoir of all goodness and all pleasure. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, there is no real pleasure. When, therefore, one's body, mind, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. Kardamamuni says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness, and by experiencing your face to face, eye to eye, by experiencing you face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight has now been attained. These statements are the pure devotional situation. For a devotee, the perfection of the senses is to engage in the service of the Lord. The sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. The power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasada, is perfected. When all the senses engaged in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material from material. Let's see. Sorry. When all the senses engage in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. When one is freed from all designated conditional life and fully engaged in the service of the Lord, one's service is called bhakti yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally is bhakti yoga. In bhakti yoga is the perfection of sight. The exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kardama Muni. He gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life after life to see the form of the personality of God. He was not fictitious. He was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. Well, this is a profound statement. In life, everything depends on what we see. So, if we can see the form of the Supreme Personality Godhead, that is the perfection of seeing. If we can hear the Personality Godhead, that is the perfection of hearing. So, if someone is deaf and dumb and blind, you might say, oh, that's a big handicap. They can't hear, they can't see, and they can't deaf, dumb, and blind. So they can't hear, deaf, dumb, meaning they can't hear, and deaf, dumb, and dumb, and so their senses are not functioning. So, what hope is there for a person like that? Yes, there is hope. They can still touch, they can still taste, and they, even though they can't hear, see, or see, uh, and they can't speak properly, still they have the touch and the taste. So all their senses are not, let's say, uh, in state of and all their senses are not working, but the remaining senses, taste and touch, are still there. Many times, a blind person, when they meet someone, they touch their face, recognize who the person is. And they can recognize just by touching the face. So, and then of course, by hearing the person, they can understand by hearing the person. If their hearing doesn't work, they can still understand who the person is by touching their face. So you have touch, taste, smell, uh, and other ways of understanding things. Touch, taste, smell. Um, what else is there? Touch, taste, smell. Sight. Oh yes, sight, of course. Uh, so there are different ways of understanding. Yes, and then hearing. Hearing, yeah. There are different ways of understanding who the person is. Okay. Uh, so here it says that the Supreme Personality Godhead is described here as the reservoir of all goodness and all pleasure. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, there is no real pleasure. When, therefore, one's body, mind, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. Okay, well, that is a very profound statement. In other words, when we're engaged in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. So how can we be engaged in the service of the Lord? Well, there's many ways. You can chant for the Lord, you can pray to the Lord, you can glorify the Lord, you can serve the Lord. There are many different ways of attaining the highest perfectional stage of goodness. Gardama Muni says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. Okay, so you can look up the word nomenclature. It refers to how you identify someone. Nomenclature, Nomenclature. And here it says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. The nomenclature refers to uh, how you describe something. What's it saying? Yes. The lenient system zoological nomenclature. Yeah, so how you describe something. The nomenclature of goodness. So nomenclature means how you describe something. Okay.
A system or a set of rules used to name things within a field or discipline.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, so when it says here, when one's body, mind, activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. So there you're naming something. You're naming the condition of the highest perfectional stage when the mind, body, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord. Okay, and that's why it says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. So everything that defines goodness is called the nomenclature. And by experiencing you by experiencing you face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight has now been attained. Okay, this perfection of sight. Well, uh, that's a very important point because everybody is seeing, everybody is hearing, everyone is tasting, everyone is touching, and so forth. But the perfection of sight is to see the Lord. The perfection of taste is to have the Lord's prasadam. So you have sight, taste. The perfection of hearing is to hear about the glories of the Lord. So you have sight, taste, hearing, and touch. And perfection is to touch the body of a devotee or the body of the Lord. Okay. The Lord, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. So that phrase, nomenclature of goodness, means everything that is considered to be goodness is nomenclature means the name. So everything that you can put into the category of goodness, every name that you can put into the category of goodness is the nomenclature of goodness. You want to look up that phrase, nomenclature of goodness, see what it says. Nomenclature means name. So when it says, your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. So any way you can define something as being goodness is called the nomenclature of goodness.
Refers to various items, concepts used to describe, measure, and discuss the quality, morality, and value of goodness in philosophical, ethical, and practical contexts.
Right, it's every way you can name it.
There's virtue, ethics, morality, altruism, benevolence, integrity, justice, empathy, generosity, compassion, righteousness, charity, honor, humanitarianism. These are all different buckets in there.
Yes. Okay, very good. So your lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness. So everything that is good about someone, uh, because nomenclature means how to name something. So he's kind, he's very erudite, he's very happy. Exactly. So those are all nomenclatures, names, or characteristics that are unique to the Lord. And by experiencing you face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight has now been attained. Okay. So without seeing Krishna, this is why we have darshan. We have the ability to see Krishna in his glorious form every day. And by experiencing you face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight has now been attained. These statements are the pure devotional situation for a devotee. The perfection of the senses is to engage in the service of the Lord. The sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. The power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasada, is perfected. When all the senses engage in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. So let's say someone is in this class and they hear this. Then they go home and they start to play a video game. So immediately, and the video game, well, it's one of the traditional video games all about killing someone. So what happens is it completely destroys their ability to appreciate the qualities of the Lord. And that's why it says here, the sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. Yeah, but if you use the sense of sight to see a video game, it's corrupted. It's not perfected. It's on the other hand, it's corrupted. And the sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. So if we hear, let's say, the news, or we hear nonsense talk and so forth, it's corrupted. It's not perfected. And uh, the power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasada, is perfected. So if you eat meat, the power to taste, again, is corrupted. When all the senses engage in relationship with personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga. So here we have a very nice definition of bhakti yoga. When all our senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, engaged in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. So that's what we're doing right now. Instead of hearing all kinds of nonsense things, we are learning every day more and more things about the Lord. And when all the senses engage in relationship, personality, Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga. In other words, your eyes, your ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, your intelligence, when it's all directed toward the Lord and pleasing the Lord, that's called bhakti yoga. Okay. Uh, when one is freed from all designated conditional life. So, what does that term mean? Designated conditional life. You identify yourself falsely. You designate yourself falsely. I am Western Washington person. I am Eastern Washington person. I am North Washington person. I am South Washington person. Well, these are all basically false designations. Just by saying, well, I live in the north part of Washington, and so therefore I'm a North Washington person. That's a false definition of who somebody is. So therefore, it says here is one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. Well, material indulgence would be, let's say, playing soccer or baseball or going to a movie and different things like that. All different types of uh, pleasing the mundane senses. eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. With no attachment or no, let's say, reference of serving the Lord. Okay, so, but when one fully engages in service of the Lord, one's service is called Bhakti Yoga. So that's what we're aiming for when we can engage always in the service of the Lord. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally is Bhakti Yoga, is the perfection of sight. The exalted, so that's why we can see the Lord every day in the temple. We can see him by being in the temple, or we can see him by seeing the video of the Lord. There are many different ways how we can see the Lord. It's not only one way. Yes.
Maharaj, if somebody is dead and deaf and they're causing them blind, how can they experience the Lord?
Right. With their fingers, their hand, they touch the body of the Lord. They can perceive the Lord like that. Touch it. It's so you have seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and one more. What's the other one? Tasting. What? I said hearing. Seeing, hearing, touching, tasting,
Smelling.
and what? Smelling. Yeah. So those are different ways of perceiving things. Like dogs, they usually understand things by smelling. And human beings, they usually understand things by seeing and touching. And there are other living entities that perceive things by smelling. Like, for example, plants and trees, they see things by smelling. In fact, why don't you look that up? Plants can emit smells, aromatic smells, and in that way they communicate with other plants. It's a whole science of aromatherapy, aroma science. What's it say about plants that communicate by uh, expanding their aroma? Yeah. What? Did you say something?
No, I'm just saying plants communicating via smell, right?
Yeah.
Yes, plants can make smells to communicate with others using volatile organic compounds, VOCs. VOCs. VOCs are tiny molecules that are often associated with distinct smells that can easily evaporate and float through the air. Plants use VOCs for a variety of purposes, including internal communication, coordinating growth and optimizing resource use, defense, 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 producing VOCs like terpenes to repel predators, attacking pollinators, producing VOCs to seduce pollinators, warning other plants, sending out warning signals to other plants in the area of possible infestations by insects or other threats like predation, helping seeds decide when to germinate, using scents to signal when it's best to germinate. For example, when mountain pine beetles burrow in the bark of a pine tree, they emit pheromones that tell other beetles to come to the area, leading to infestations in a reality short period of time. Nearby plants exposed to these VOCs can prepare their own defense weapons in response.
So it's by smell. You see, they communicate with each other through smell. They can communicate. Oh, there's some predators here. Be careful. Like for example, there's a lot of some really interesting things in nature. Like for example, there are plants that are able to kill insects and eat them.
Venus flytrap.
Right. You said Venus.
Flytrap.
Yeah. So they open, they look really beautiful, and they emit some aroma. And the bug or whatever, the butterfly, some bug or some fly says, "Oh, this plant smells really good. Let me land on the plant and enjoy that smell." And as soon as they do that, the plant closes on them. What is that? Yeah. So what is that called?
It's,
Yeah. It's a predator.
and like an insect comes near, just it has these sort of teeth kind of things, and just when it lands, that's like an indication to the plant, close your mouth, and then it closes its mouth, and then like there, from what
It
I
kills them. It kills them.
it kills
And they eat it in a sense. Yeah. You see, there's so many interesting things in nature. Yeah. And then there's something called a honey trap. Look that word up, honey trap. That's the way women who are spies can attract a enemy person, and then uh, because that person becomes interested in that lady and wants to have sex with that lady, she leads them into a place where there's someone's waiting to kill them. It's called a honey trap. So it's not only by smell, it's by also sexual attraction and so forth. Uh,
There's also a honey trap plant. It does the same.
oh, okay.
Looks like this. These things are
Okay. It's sharp things.
it's like
Oh, okay.
sticks.
So you can't get free from it.
And then I think from what I understand like this, when one of them gets attached to the bug, all the other ones squeeze together to get to the bug. All the other tiny goo.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one other one, and it's called pitcher plant. It looks like this. It looks like this. If a bug gets inside, it closes its lid, and then it has to go all the way through it, and then the bug gets inside like this big fat part of it, and then there's the saliva or goo inside of it.
It dies.
Yeah, and it dies.
Yeah. So you see, there's different ways that, in other words, there are predator plants. Yeah, predator plants. There's a whole bunch of them. And there's many different ways of catching a bug or, and usually it's by smell uh, and or taste. So, and the same thing happens with human beings. Human beings can be enticed to put themselves in danger by, like, oftentimes the women will entice a person and say, well, you can come and see me in this place. And when the man gets there are these criminals waiting there to kill him and take his money. That happens a lot. That's why we should not be interested in any illicit activities with women, because any woman who offers her body for sex has someone behind her. It's called her. Um, well, there are always men that are controlling these women, and the women entice men to come and have sex or whatever. And then sometimes a man that's hiding, he'll come out and kill the other man and take his money, or beat him up and take his money. So it's happening with the insects and the flies, and it's happening with the human beings. It's called the honey trap. Yes.
It's called Nepenthes, also known as tropical pitcher plants or monkey cups. These plants survive in low nitrogen environments by eating insects and small animals, so even animals.
Whoa. Those are really mean plants.
These sticky fly paper plants have leaves covered with tentacles that secrete nectar, secrete nectar, digestive enzymes, and
Enzymes.
adhesive compounds.
And what?
Adhesive
It has
I
butterworts.
didn't get that word. What is it?
adhesive.
Adhesive. Yes, not adhesive. It's adhesive. In other words, gluey things, gluey substance that catches the fly or whatever.
Butterworks pinguica. These flowering plants are sticky glandular leaves to trap and digest insects. The leaves produce mucus and digestive
Enzymes.
enzymes to supplement the plant's poor mineral nutrition.
Yeah, plants are predatory also. And those are predatory plants. They want to get some protein from the dead body. You say it's not just lions and tigers, it's also plants. It's very interesting what you see in nature. Therefore, uh, this everything is based on how you see for human beings, and for other living entities like dogs and plants. Everything is based on how you smell things. So we can be caught in any way. Because why? So there are certain plants they can or certain insects, they can only be caught by smell. But a human being has 5 highly developed senses. That means we can be caught by any one of those senses being attracted to something. So we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So there's more ways that a person can be tricked to be, let's say, exploited or killed. Uh, like, for example, someone may see some really nice food and they're really excited to eat it. And when they eat it, they suddenly realize that there was poison in it and they die. So you see, the human being has 5 very highly developed senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So we can be caught by any one of those senses uh, being tricked. So therefore, we have to have the intelligence to know how to avoid dangerous situations and dangerous things. Like there are plants that look really nice. If you touch them, you'll get a rash, and sometimes it's very severe. What do you call that? I forget the name of that.
Poison ivy.
Poison what?
Poison ivy.
Yeah, poison ivy. It looks nice. You touch it, then all of a sudden you start itching, and you get a rash, and it takes a long time to get rid of it. So uh, we have to be very careful about uh, what we see and what we smell. There are some smells that smell good, like glue. Glue. Well, they put these chemicals in the glue that make it smell good, right? And you start inhaling it, and pretty soon you can faint. So don't inhale glue. A lot of kids will inhale glue to get high because it's an intoxicant. So there are many ways that people are caught um, in a trap. So it's called a honey trap. Um, so they're attracted to the taste of honey, and then they get stung by bees. And it's all different ways that people can get hurt by being attracted to smells or sights. Uh, so we have 5 highly developed senses. Most, let's say, animals or insects, they only have 1 or 2 highly developed senses. We have 5 highly developed senses. So we have to be really careful when we decide to touch something or taste something. Okay. So here it says, um, that when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord is perfected, the power to taste when one enjoys by eating prasada is perfected. When all the senses engaged in relationship with the personified Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. When one is freed from all designated conditional life, well, designated conditional life, what does that mean? I'm American. I'm Mexican. I am this. I am that. That's all designated conditions of life. And fully engages in the service of the Lord, one's service is called bhakti yoga. So when one says, I'm not any of these other things, I am the eternal servant of Krishna. That is who we actually are. We're the eternal servant of Krishna. Most people don't know that. So they identify themselves as, I am a Western Washington. I am this, I am that. But when you say, I am the eternal servant of Krishna, that's who you really are. Therefore, it says here, when one is freed from all designated conditional life and fully engages in the service of the Lord, one's service is called Bhakti Yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally in Bhakti Yoga is the perfection of sight. The exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kardama Muni. He gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life after life to see this form of the personality of Godhead. He was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. That's why we have darshan every day in the temple. And so people can see the form of the Lord. Or you can have darshan with your cell phone. You know, if you can't go to the temple, you can look on your cell phone and see the daily darshan. Right? So, Prabhupada says that he was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. So a fictitious yogi will uh, uh, only pretend to be attracted by the vision of the Lord, but actually are engaged in seeing so many other things that are not related to the Lord. What do you call that? There's a name for that. They are, well, anyway, Prabhupada calls them fictitious yogi. Fictitious means false. So those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. Okay, so we'll go to text 14. Your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane nations. So when it says true vessel, referring to it's comparing the feet to like a boat, uh, and when you become interested in the lotus feet of the Lord, it becomes like a boat that takes us across the ocean of mundane ignorance. So by meditating on the feet of the Lord, by bowing down to the feet of the Lord, etc., it is like a true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane nations. So that's just a beautiful metaphorical statement. Is saying that the feet of the Lord are like a real boat that takes one across the ocean of mundane ignorance. And there is an ocean of mundane ignorance, a huge ocean of mundane ignorance. But if we meditate on the transcendental feet of the Lord, that's like being on a boat that can take us across the ocean of ignorance. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. Okay, now, who's he referring to when it says, when even person, it says, by the spell of the deluding energy, will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. Well, these are things that you hope you don't have to experience them. But I remember one time in France, I went to what you call uh, the underground train station, and to get there you have to go down steps, right? So at one point we were walking down the steps, and then there was some flat area, and then more steps. And in the flat area, there was an intoxicated man, an intoxicated woman. And the man had grabbed the leg of the woman. They were both intoxicated. And the woman started screaming. And why did he grab her leg? Because he wanted to have sex in public, right in the train station. And it was like, a really difficult thing to hear and see because both of them were unclean and both of them were intoxicated. So here it says that uh, only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. Well, that's exactly what I saw. There were two people rotting in hell, and the man had grabbed one of the feet of the lady. So that's different than taking shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. You see. Uh, so it says only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. So, yeah, Krishna is merciful. He'll help everyone, even the lowest persons. He'll help the Adama to become the Uttama. Adama means the lowest person, and Uttama means the greatest person or the best person. So, if one is willing to listen to a devotee, then even though they're the lowest person, they can become the best person. So this hearing devotees is essential for making spiritual advancement. Otherwise, people are chasing after momentary pleasures of the senses. And it says, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. So that there are people in hell and they can even experience trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses. That's a very amazing statement. You usually think, well, in hell, everybody's suffering. But even in hell, there are some trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses when even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. Well, see, this is the difference between the Christians and the Hare Krishnas. one can be in hell and still be liberated. Whereas, and I looked this up. Do Christians say if you go to hell, you can never get out? Just want to double check that. If you go to hell, you can never. Do Christians say if you go to hell, you'll never be able to get out of hell? Does it say that? If you go to hell, do the Christians say that if you go to hell, you can never get out of it? Does it say that?
Yeah,
What does it say?
it's an eternal state.
What?
Once you are condemned to hell,
Yeah,
it remains there forever without the possibility of return or redemption.
here it is. That's a false statement.
According to Catholic teaching, sinners who go to hell will not be able to get out because they refuse to turn away from their sins and ask for God's forgiveness.
Well, wait a minute. Okay. What did you read, Prabhu? What,
Same thing, yeah.
no, let me hear the wording.
It said, once a soul is condemned to hell, it remains there forever without the possibility of return or redemption.
Yeah, there it is. That's a little different than what you just read, Prabhu. What did you read?
According to Catholic teaching, sinners who go to hell will not be able to get out because they refuse to turn away from their sins and ask for God's forgiveness.
Okay, well, that's a little bit different than this other statement, right? Let me hear your statement.
Once a soul is condemned to hell, it remains there forever without
Right.
the possibility of return or redemption.
Right. So what happens if a soul, according to the Catholics, in hell does accept the mercy of the Lord or praise to the Lord? Can they get out? That's the question. Over here, it's saying you can't get out. Once you go to hell, you can't get out. Well, what do they say? What do the Catholics say? Okay, do Catholics look up? Do Catholics believe that once you go to hell, there is no salvation for such persons? Once you go to hell, there's no salvation. Haribol. Is that a fact?
Mhm.
What does it say? Catholics?
Yes, according to Roman Catholic doctrine, once a soul is condemned to hell, there is no possibility of salvation or escape.
There it is. The nasty God. That means they don't understand anything about Krishna. Yes.
That people can lose their salvation through mortal sin, but that it's possible to have assurance of salvation.
Read that again. Let me hear.
Church teaches that people can lose their salvation through mortal sin, but that it's possible to have assurance of salvation.
Okay, but what if they're in hell? What happens to people who are in hell? Can they get salvation? What does it say about that? What you just read said they can't get out. right?
Yeah.
Is that Catholics?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what? Possible?
Once you go to hell, there is no coming back. Until that time, you have salvation.
You have a possibility. Yes. Okay.
Another article it says, Maharaj, the church explains biblical descriptions of hell being eternal or endless punishment as being descriptive of their infliction by God rather than an unending temporal period.
Temporal.
Temporal period. Later-day Saint scripture quotes God as saying, "I am endless, and the punishment which is given from my hand is endless punishment."
Okay. In other words, it's saying it's not temporal. Temporal means for some period of time. It's completely forever. You're damned forever. You can't get out. Yeah. And that's wrong.
It further says, "For endless is my name." Sorry, again I get it. So Later-day Saint scripture quotes God as saying, "I am endless, and the punishment which is given from my hand is endless punishment. For endless is my name, wherefore eternal punishment is God's punishment. Endless punishment is God's punishment." Later-day Saints also believe in a more permanent concept of hell, commonly referred to as outer darkness.
What?
Commonly referred to as outer darkness.
Outer
Outer.
darkness. But anyway, basically, the Catholic Church believes that you go to hell, you can never get out. And that's not true. Okay.
How they play around with the words that
Yeah.
God is endless, the punishment is also endless.
Right. Right.
God becomes like negative.
Mean. Very mean. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
elsewhere.
What?
We'll wrap the.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, unless there are any questions. So don't become a Catholic person, because if you go to hell, you can never get out. It's only
Hare
in
Krishna.
Yes.
Hare
Go ahead.
Krishna. I have a question.
Yes.
Is there really a hell where people go and burn, or is this hell and the goal is to get out of here?
No, there is. You can. It's in the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It explains the different places in hell. So there's different places, like, if you're a rapist, there's places for rapists in hell where they get really, they have to embrace a fiery iron form of a woman. So they get burned, and they just keep getting burned without, in other words, they don't burn to a cinder and then collapse. They just keep getting burned. So they're different. I mean, you can look this up. The different uh, places of hell and the specific sufferings that people receive according to their sins. This is according to the Catholic Church.
Okay, you said I can find it in the which canto? The fifth canto?
Okay, in the fifth canto of Bhagavad Gita. I'm sorry, fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, you will find the 20 or 30 different places in hell where people could go to. I don't have the fifth canto here. Let me see if I do.
Which chapter, Maharaj?
Fifth canto. Well, you have to look it up in the index. Description of hell.
Last chapter, description of hellish planets.
Okay. What's it say? There's a lot of detail given.
Yep. I'm not sure
What?
I'm not sure which words I have to follow, but I need to search within the chapter.
A description of the hellish planet. Okay.
I need to go deeper.
Uh, Sukadev Goswami describes the following 28 hells. Tamishra, Anda, Tamishra, Rorava, Maharorava, Kumbhikpaka, Kala Sutra, Asipatravana, and so forth. So it's explained in the chapter 26, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, chapter 26. That's where you will find description of the hellish planets. And there's the names of the planets, and there's the different types of suffering that one can undergo for different types of sins that they have performed. So there's 28 hells. Oh my God. So you can look this up in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 26, a description of the hellish planets. Haribol. Everything is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything.
So precise, like how many
Hells.
hells.
Yeah. Well, because there's different types of sin. You know, if you rape someone, there's a special hell for that. If you are drinking liquor, there's a special hell for that. You know? So there's 28 hells. Yeah. And also, and you can read Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially in the 10th canto, you read the different places in the spiritual world. So, and then in the 12th, I think this 12th canto, you read about the different places in hell.
So fifth canto,
Oh, fifth canto, I'm sorry, yeah.
26th chapter.
Yeah, fifth canto, 26th chapter, you read about the different places of hell. So everything is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hadi Bol. Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you, my dear devotees. Did we have some homework? I thought we had some homework. Anyway, our homework,
Yeah, yesterday we had.
what was the homework?
They write down the differences between Mayavadi's concept of perfection and versus devotees' concept of perfection.
Oh, did you do that? No.
Sorry.
Why don't you do it? And now the next homework is write down the different places of hell and what happens in those places. You have to look up the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, text what, 25, 26?
26.
26. Fifth canto, text 26.
So homework is write down the different places of hell and what happens.
Yeah. Just as there are explanations of what happens in hell, there are also explanations in Srimad Bhagavatam what happens in the spiritual world. You have the full explanation of everything in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, thank you very much.